Hi, everyone. I'm here to talk about all things OCD and anxiety and how I see things. Today, I want to talk about something that is a very common comment I hear from people I work with that have OCD, and that is this sense that there is a before and an after when it comes to OCD or anxious thoughts. That before I had my OCD episode, things were great. And after that, life has been horrible. I want to address that. And I want to share my own story to illustrate this and show how it's looked for me. So, when I was growing up, I had a very loving and supportive family. I had lots of friends. I did well in school. I was athletic. The future looked great. So, for all intents and purposes, things were great. And right before I went away to college, I had a thought. And that thought was an unwanted, troubling thought about harming myself. I had never had that thought before. And that thought bothered me. And that thought led to a lot of fear and then anxiety and then dread and then depression and then a sort of paralysis because I didn't know what to do about it. Now, after I was diagnosed with OCD, I saw a number of different psychologists and I got therapy. I tried different medications, and I would just really do anything I could to feel better. So I went from feeling great to being depressed and anxious. And it became my life mission to really feel better. And this lasted up until about last year. So that's been a good 30 plus years. So, meanwhile, during that time, I was also growing professionally and personally. I had a lot of great jobs. I lived in different places. I traveled. I had relationships. So, how could that be? If I was fully depressed and having these thoughts, how did I keep going? And I think that's where things get interesting. What if there is an energy of life that moves all things? It spins the planet. It's what breathes us. It's what grows the plants. And what if that energy was moving me through life and which moves all of us through life, despite what I was thinking? Because I kept living. Life didn't say, let's freeze time and wait until you feel better to go on. And what if there is a mind that wants to protect me? And this mind will say, let's get back to a time when things were better and when you felt better. So there was a difference between what my mind was saying and what was actually happening. And I was living in my mind. But life doesn't care. And life doesn't see a before and an after. Life just lives. It's continually moving. It's showing up moment to moment. It's fresh every moment. It's like hitting a reset button. We just have this moment and then this moment. And there's no timeline. The only time is right now. But we can see how the mind has an agenda. Consider that when we are very young and just come into this world, that this energy, life force is very apparent to us. It's all we see. We're just one with everything. As young toddlers, we cry when we're hungry and we stop eating when we're full. We sleep when we're tired. We start walking when we walk, and that's different for everyone. Life is just living us. Look at any toddler today. And then as our minds start to develop between the ages of 2 to 7, we start to get identified. We get identities. I'm a me and you're a you. And there's labels that are put on things. We start to get conditioned in our lives. And there's a separation that happens. Suddenly, I need protecting. This me needs protecting. And that mind needs to constantly scan the environment now for threats, dangers. How do we stay safe? And part of that is looking at what happens in the past to make sure it doesn't happen again in the future. So the mind is totally time-based. And it operates much the same it did back in early man when we were fighting saber-toothed tigers and fending off warring tribes, trying to fight for our survival. The mind has not evolved much since then. It's still in that protection mode. And a mind will also be selective about what it remembers and where its focus is. It's a great generalizer. It will say you were anxious and depressed for decades, and you've got OCD, and that's who you are. It makes these sweeping generalizations about who we are and what's happening in our lives. It doesn't see life as showing up moment to moment. It creates stories about who we are and what's happened, and we innocently believe those stories. But if we look at life again and how it's always moving through us and just showing up fresh in this moment, there's only one moment after another. And if that's true, then we can't be any different than we are in this current moment, because that's all we have. And we can't be anywhere else other than in this moment, because that's all that's happening. There's only right now. So how can there be a then when I was better, when there is only ever now, this moment? That then was how it was showing up then perfectly. And now is how life is showing up perfectly. There's no better or worse. There's just is, and it can't be any different. Now, I'm not saying that that moment or those moments aren't really hard and don't feel great. I'm not minimizing what can happen when we feel really difficult thoughts and feel the need to relieve them through compulsions or doing something else. What we do with those thoughts in that moment is a whole different conversation. But I do want to point out that when your mind starts saying, life used to be better before my OCD thoughts, remember that life showed up as it did in that moment, and it couldn't have been any different because it wasn't different. It was what it was. And life can only be what it ever is. And can we get curious about that? You can try looking for yourself. So I hope this was helpful, and I will see you next time.